A few years ago, when I started to get more and more clamps, I needed a space-saving way to store them.
I wanted the rails to hang on the wall so they don't take that much room. It's also more comfortable to grab them at the handle when taking them. So I made a profile where the big parallel clamps can hang in every second slot and all the other clamps fit directly next to each other. Below the parallel clamps, the free slots can be filled up with other clamps. When I built the profile, I didn't have key clamps, but luckily by accident the handles had a snug fit in the slots.
The system has worked now for a long time pretty well, but to improve it, and because I still need more space for clamps, I decided to make a whole new system.
So at first I had to cut down some strips for the profiles. I used some left-off kitchen countertop, which is probably not the perfect material, but most of the old profiles are 27mm thick beechwood, so I think 40mm beechwood is probably strong enough. The improvements of the profile I had to make in this step. The first thing is to make the stripe 7 centimeters wide instead of 6. So it's a little wider than the neck of the parallel clamps. The second point is to give them a little bit of an angle, about 2 degrees, so the clamps rather slide into the profile than out of the profile by themselves. Here I set the angle of the plunge saw to 2 degrees, and then it was just a matter of ripping down the strips. The next step was to get off all the clamps to be able to tear down the old profiles. The teardown was just a matter of unscrewing all the old profiles from the wall. First I took a few measurements of the old parts before I carefully marked the new ones. I always make sure to have a sharp pencil because it makes it much more easy to be precise. Every 3 centimeters I make a little mark for the center of the slots, and I always measure from the front so the little mistakes I make with every mark doesn't sum up. I clamp all 3 together to mark them with the square, so I don't have to mark them one by one. To avoid any mistakes, I roughly checked my marks with one of the old profiles. The next step was drilling all the holes. Therefore, I needed to get the drill press into my shop. I only mark at one line where the hole exactly has to be. By holding the board with the drill press, I can set the fence. So by sliding along the fence, my hole will always be in the right position. So now it was just a matter of drilling all the holes. The next step is to cut all the slots with a miter saw. But at first I want to change the saw blade. I got a new one from Stehle for this project, and I thought it could be interesting for some to get a first impression of an alternative to the Festool saw blades. This is the first project with the saw blade, so I can't tell you anything about lifetime. But the first impression is pretty well, and I think it's good to have an alternative. Also, if I never had issues with the Festool saw blades. Now it's time to set up the saw for these cuts. I use an extra piece behind, not just to get a cleaner cut, but also to get a straight ground line, even if I don't cut all the way through. By pulling and then turning the little knob in the back, I can set the death stop. At the first few holes I make sure to fit the handle of the klee clamps into the slots. I have to cut the slot slightly bigger than the hole in the back to get a snug fit of the handle. And then there was just a lot of cuts to make. The last step is hanging all the profiles to the wall. I simply screwed them to the wall as the old ones too. Therefore I drilled some holes in the back of the profiles. I also countersunk the holes at the ends. As I could use some of the old holes and I wanted the profiles to be in the same height as the old ones, I didn't have to find the right position again. So I slightly attached the profiles with a screw in one of the old holes and marked the new holes I had to drill. I like to mark the holes just with a screw and a hammer. The rest was easy, just drilling the holes, putting the anchors in and screwing the profiles to the wall. And finally it was time to put the clamps back in place. Thanks for watching.